Let's talk about something you're probably doing right this second. Sitting. It seems harmless enough, right? But it turns out that comfortable chair you're in, it might actually be one of the biggest health threats you face every single day.
I know. That sounds a little over the top. Is your chair more dangerous than a cigarette? But seriously, what if the science is starting to point in that direction? It's a really provocative question, but it gets right to the heart of why we need to be paying very close attention to this.
Because here is the really unsettling truth. Massive studies, and I mean one of them analyzed data from over 1 million people, found that sitting for more than 8 hours a day with basically no physical activity, well, it carries a risk of dying that is shockingly close to the risks we see from obesity and smoking. Yeah, you heard that right. Your desk job could be putting you in the same risk category as some of the biggest health crises we know of.
So let's be super clear about what we're talking about. The official term scientists use is sedentary behavior. And really, it's any time you're awake but your body is just on standby. You're using very little energy, less than 1.5 of what they call metabolic units, while you're sitting, lying down, or reclining. Just think of it like your body is switched on, but the engine is just idling.
Okay, so let's get into what happens when your body is stuck on idle. Because the real danger here isn't something you can see or feel right away. No. It's this cascade of invisible damage that starts happening inside your body from the moment you stop moving.
And what's so fascinating here is just how small these numbers seem. I mean, look at the energy jump from sitting to just standing. It is tiny. But that tiny little metabolic gap, that is where all the problems start. That small step up is literally the difference between your body being switched on versus being switched off.
You see, the second you sit down, these crucial biological processes just grind to a halt. Think of this enzyme called lipoprotein lipase, or LPL, as your body's fat-burning engines. When you're up and about, these engines are humming, pulling fats right out of your bloodstream to use for energy. But when you sit, LPL activity just plummets. And what happens then? Well, the fat, the triglycerides, builds up in your blood, and your body gets worse at responding to insulin. You are, effectively, shutting off your own metabolic engines.
And then there's this. Your circulatory system actually has what a lot of people call a second heart, and it's your calf muscles. Every single time you take a step, those muscles contract and they literally pump blood from your legs back up to your actual heart. But when you sit for hours on end, that pump just shuts down, and the blood starts to pool in your legs.
And what's truly alarming is that this isn't just about getting swollen ankles. That pooling of blood dramatically increases the risk for something that can be life-threatening: deep vein thrombosis, DVT. Research has shown that office workers who are basically glued to their chairs face a 2.8 times higher risk of developing one of these dangerous blood clots.
But the damage doesn't even stop there. Physically, sitting puts a ton of pressure on your spinal discs. It also causes your glute muscles to basically forget how to fire properly, a condition they've actually named gluteal amnesia. And on a systemic level, research suggests that every single hour you spend sitting increases your risk of sarcopenia, that's age-related muscle loss, by a jaw-dropping 33%.
And if that wasn't enough, it gets even more profound. The latest research in epigenetics is suggesting that our sedentary habits might literally be speeding up our biological aging process. Things like screen time in particular seem to have a major effect on what's called age acceleration, which means your biological age, how old your body actually is on the inside, can get way ahead of your chronological age. Your choices aren't just affecting your health, they might be telling your cells to grow old faster.
But it's not just about our physical health. The research is also showing this really critical distinction when it comes to our minds. Because, as it turns out, not all sitting is created equal.
Take a 2023 study from Saudi Arabia. The link they found between sedentary life and mental health was, well, it was stark. A staggering 65% of the people in the study, that's a huge majority, showed signs of depression. It just highlights this really powerful but often overlooked connection between being physically still and your psychological well-being.
But here is the really interesting nuance. The study found that the risk was strongly tied to mentally passive sitting, like zoning out in front of the TV. That kind of inactivity was linked to a higher chance of depression and anxiety. But in contrast, mentally active sitting, like doing office work or reading a book, it showed no significant link at all. So it seems like what your brain is up to while your body is still matters a whole lot.
So wow, after all that doom and gloom, you're probably wondering, what on earth can we do about it? Well, the great news is that the science doesn't just point out the problem, It also gives us some really clear, evidence-based ways to fight back. And honestly, it's simpler than you might think.
So, a groundbreaking study from Griffith University came up with what they called the golden ratio. And it is incredibly simple. For every 30 minutes you spend sitting, you follow it up with 15 minutes of standing. That's it. It's a clear, simple rule that gives you the structure you need to break that long cycle of just being still.
And guess what? It totally works. People who followed this 30-15 rule had a clinically meaningful drop in their lower back pain. They also said they felt less stressed at work and had fewer problems concentrating. And maybe best of all, 72% of the people in the study actually stuck with it, which just proves that this is a realistic change most of us can actually make.
Okay, but what if you're in a job where you just have to sit for hours? What if you want to completely wipe out that increased risk of dying that we talked about at the very beginning? Well, there's an answer for that too.
The number you need to remember is 60 to 75. That's how many minutes of moderate intensity activity, think something like a brisk walk, that you need each day to effectively cancel out the deadly effects of sitting for over 8 hours. It's a clear, powerful goal to shoot for.
And here's the proof. This data is from that huge analysis in The Lancet. Just look at the column on the far right. For people with low physical activity, sitting for over 8 hours a day increases their risk of dying by 59%. But now look at the high activity group. For them, that same amount of sitting only increases the risk by 4%. It essentially erases the danger. Getting enough daily activity can bring you right back to square one.
So what this all boils down to is a simple 3-point plan of attack. First, just try to reduce your total sitting time overall, whenever you can. Second, make sure to interrupt that sitting time frequently. That 30-15 rule is a fantastic proven way to do it. And third, if you want to completely neutralize the thread, you need to aim for those 60 to 75 minutes of moderate activity every day.
So in the end, it all comes down to a series of tiny little decisions you make all day long. Every single time you choose to stand up, you are making a powerful choice for your long-term health. The science couldn't be clearer. So the only real question left is, what choice are you going to make next?